keys. Today we are covering the two keys, Justice, key 11, and the Suspended Man, key 12. So let's begin. So the first key we're going to cover is key 11, Justice, and you should have that before you. In the Wheel of Fortune, key 10, which we covered last time, we were shown the law of cause and consequence. We learned that we can use it consciously. We learned that it enables us to be certain of reaping what we have sown. In the Justice key 11, we will learn how to use the law of cause and effect in our everyday lives. We will learn about the law of equilibrium, which is the foundation of key 11. The background of key 11 is the same yellow that is shown on key 1, the Magician, and key 8, Strength. The color yellow indicates mental equilibrium and intellect. It represents the element air and light. So the law of equilibrium is brought to bear through the directive activity of self-consciousness in key 1, the Magician, and by means of the serpent power symbolized by key 8, Strength. You'll realize now that the use of colors like the yellow and in the background of certain cards means that they're linked in a certain way, which I just said through the directive activity of self-consciousness in key 1 and the serpent power symbolized by key 8. So equilibrium is defined as a state in which opposing forces or influences are balanced. Now we look at the violet curtains and opening your spiritual sight. The two curtains suggest duality and polarity. Their symmetrical arrangement typifies balance. Their folds remind us of the drapery of the High Priestess, key 2, and they suggest vibration. Violet is associated with the letter Cath and Jupiter, and therefore key 10, the Wheel of Fortune. Violet is an indicator of spiritual power and truth. Violet relates to the solar plexus in our bodies. So what does all of this mean? It means that the mechanical aspect of manifestation, symbolized by the Wheel of Fortune, veils the living conscious identity, capitalized, behind it. In other words, all of Mother Nature hides the conscious power, force, and energy behind it. Without opening your spiritual eyes, you won't see this identity. And most people are only looking with the eyes provided to them by Mother Nature. In this key, the veil is beginning to part. We just have to get past Justice, the one brandishing the sword. Just remember, for each and every physical sense that you have also been provided with a spiritual sense. It just takes a bit of effort to develop them. So how does this law of equilibrium work? Let's say that we are like a farmer or a gardener who plants his seeds in the ground. He can't see his seeds, but he applies water to them and cultivates the ground. At a certain point, little green sprouts appear. Not all of the sprouts are from the seeds that he planted. Possibly the wind and bird droppings have added seeds from unknown sources. He must be diligent to separate these weeds from his crop. Your subconscious mind is like the farmer's or the gardener's ground. At first, you can't see the little sprouts or the results in your life of the seeds or ideas that you have consciously planted in your subconscious mind. These are the good things that you wish to have in your life. You may even be repeating affirmations from time to time in order to accomplish this, in order to have good things in your life. The subconscious mind is a recording device, but it records without discrimination. anything can land in it, just like the weeds in the gardener's ground. So, life without discrimination, what does that look like? When your ideas or plans or people begin to appear in your life, you may also become aware of events that are appearing in your life which you don't think came from you. Also, there may be plans or people that you may or may not want in your life to appear. How is this possible? Where did those pesky weeds come from? Everything that you gave attention to, especially with passion and or action, including musical lyrics and dancing, movies, television shows, relationships, and work-related instances, even your attitude while driving or standing in line at the grocery store, and whether positive or negative, everything you gave attention to, that's what is being recorded. All is recorded by your subconscious mind as something that you want in your life, and therefore it will happily deliver to you. In Key 8, Strength, I mentioned that what we think, say, and do throughout the day furnishes the bulk of impressions received by our subconsciousness. All that manifests in your life has been delivered through the subconscious mind, like FedEx on steroids. Let's look at the throne. Let's see how this law is expressed in Key 11. The throne repeats the symbolism of the pillars of the high priestess in Key 2 and the veil between them. Here in Key 11, the pillars are part of the throne and are surmounted by pomegranates instead of lotus buds. This shows that the activity represented by Key 11 has arrived at the state of fruition. The crown is surmounted by a triple ornament. It is referring to the letter Shin, printed on Key 20, Judgment. It is in close correspondence with Key 2, High Priestess, and Key 11, which is this Justice key. The triple ornament represents the serpent power. In the serpent power's highest manifestation, it releases human consciousness from the limitations of three-dimensional interpretations of the experience. In Hindu, this is called raising the Kundalini force through the crown of the head. This is the opening of our 5 spiritual senses. The crown is green, the color of Venus and love. Remember Key 3, the Empress. She represents the harmony of nature. On the front of the crown is a red circle and white square. This refers to the movement of spirit, the red part, within physical form, represented by a 4-sided square. This little detail of the symbolism is also connected with Key 10, the Wheel of Fortune. So in Key 10, it's shown a wheel or circle moving in space, bounded by the 4 mystical animals. These 4 signs relate to the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac. The 4 fixed signs relate to the 4 elements: fire, air, earth, and water, and which constitute the forms of the physical plane. So I'll explain how this all comes together. So the ornament and the sword. The ornament on the breast of the Justice key combines a T-cross with an ellipse. The cross is indigo, the color associated with Saturn. It is also a reference to the exaltation of Saturn in Libra. The hilt of the sword is in the form of a T-cross. The handle is golden, relating to the sun, whose metal is gold. Saturn and the sun. So Saturn represents limitation and form. The sun stands for light and radiation. When the power of limitation is used positively, it is combined with the radiant energy of the sun. Thus, enlightenment exalts form. The dais and the throne. The dais and throne are of stone. This means that the law of equilibrium is operative through the physical plane. For many people, the physical plane is the only one directly sensed. The tarot means to say, if we interpret correctly our experience of the physical plane, we shall learn all that we need to know in order to begin to utilize the law of equilibrium. There's a very old quote, "That which is above is that which is below." The six-pointed star is a symbol of this saying. If you look to the right, you'll see how the six-pointed star is constructed of two triangles. The one facing down is water, the one facing up is fire. And there's another old saying that fire works through water. And fire is the spirit, and water is the manifestation through the subconscious mind. Water always represents the subconscious mind. So the six-pointed star is a symbol of this saying. We do not have to sense the higher planes in order to see the law at work. If we interpret correctly what happens to us here in the physical, we shall gain the fundamental right knowledge which will serve us everywhere, which includes the spiritual. The law of cause and effect. Key 4, the Emperor, laid down the law of cause and effect. And he's directly above justice. So justice key 11 mediates it. The justice key is directly below the Emperor in the tarot tableau. Justice is holding a sword. A sword, of course, is a symbol of discrimination, a great pruning device for all of us gardeners. Cosmic justice is always improving us. The Divine Mother, in her guise as justice, directs everything that goes on in our bodies. And our bodies are the households in which we, the higher self, the Fool, remember the Fool card, in which we live. Our bodies are controlled and sustained by this supervising agency. Our subconscious mind never lets us down. She literally preserves us from all sorts of difficulties. Work and action are the key words here. I'll just remind you that you don't wake up in the morning and say, okay, body, breathe. Okay, heart, pump. Okay, lungs, go in and out, take in the air, inhale, exhale. Okay, when I get out of bed, I don't have to direct my feet to hold up the rest of my body. All of this is done by this little supervising agency. The subconscious mind runs everything like a well-oiled machine. And when we're ill, it pulls everything together so that we are healed. Keep this in mind, the Divine Mother in her guise as justice. Also, in key 11, this is the Libra key. And on the next card, you'll see, note the small Libra symbol in the lower right-hand corner of key 11. Venus rules Libra. So we are seeing the Empress at work. Creative imagination. You will remember that Venus, key 3, the Empress, is connected with the creative imagination. Remember the Empress card where she's sitting on a stone bench and in a garden, and even the stone bench is very elaborate. Everything has been multiplied, and it's just beautiful. That's the Empress card. So all occult practice calls imagination into action. The books on yoga are full of exercises in the use of mental imagery. The books of alchemists and magicians are similar in their emphasis. Imagination builds faith. True imagination, not mere fantasy, rests on the firm foundation of science. Faith is a prime requisite for the accomplishment of the great work. Without faith, you can do nothing. You must have confidence in the principles by which you operate. Hence, all occult schools make their pupils familiar with the lives and achievements of adepts who have completed the great work. Study the lives of Jesus and Buddha. In what they said and did, the principles of the great work are explained and exemplified. The shape of the letter Lamed is that of a serpent. Look at the Hebrew letter in the lower right-hand corner of the card. Lamed represents inner discipline and self-regulation. As a verb, it means to teach. As a noun, it means ox goad. See the symbol of an ox goad in the lower right-hand corner. This is what keeps life on the road to meaning. If we stray from that road, Lamed brings us back. Our individual lives must have meaning. The scales also symbolize this principle, that the scales that she's holding in her hand. If we go too far to one side or the other, inner instruction puts us on the path again. The power of limitation, controlling karma. Now we're talking about karma. The sword becomes a major feature of Key 11 because Saturn is exalted in Libra. Saturn represents the power of limitation. This makes possible the manifestation of specific forms. That's something you should think about. This power of limitation is the active power at work in karma. Karma expresses itself to us as undeviating justice. Hence, the Saturn power has its highest manifestation in the great work that enables us to control karma. This is something to ponder. Let's see what the next slide says. The sword of severity. So now you have the whole card in front of you again. The sword of severity is the tool by which you delineate what you want. In the beginning, you want it all. Yes, I want the Mercedes. I want a big house. I want a yard. I want 20 children, blah, blah. Yes, in the beginning, you want it all. This is understandable, but it's highly impractical. Looks good on paper until you live it. There is no escape from karma. In all the universe, there is no such thing as inaction. And the literal meaning of karma is action. So it's kind of like you need to get with the program. You need to understand what's going on. The same meaning is behind the Hebrew noun, which is translated work, the word work. This is to the letter Lamed. The practical meaning of the sword, quote, use right discrimination to rid yourself of everything useless, to free yourself from attachment, from prejudice, and from resentment. So these things are useless. You will get nowhere living those, at least those items. The joy of life, yes. The whole point is that your joy and your life depend on no one but yourself. That means they don't depend on your children, your parents, your boss, the people you are the boss of, only yourself. They don't depend on your vacations or where you live or where you'd like to go. They just depend on you. The choice is yours. No other choice will work. When obstacles are in your way, you are not happy. That's the same as being ill. The tarot wants you to be not only well, but blissfully well. Health is so important that wellness underlies a total experience of the tarot. You can forget all the fancy stuff in the last row of the tarot tableau. That means the last 7 cards, the last 7 keys. You can forget them if you are not well. You just can't access them. The Justice Key teaches that the way to cultivate health is by being careful. This means that you have to eliminate anything that runs counter to the law of nature, which is the law of life. So, if you don't want to eliminate those things, that's okay. The law of life will eliminate you. Simple. So what goes against the will of life? Overdoing anything, cultivating any aspect of yourself at the expense of other aspects. You can overdo running, eating, having sex, sleeping. All of this is more or less against the rules. The Kabbalah doesn't tell you to abstain from the joy of living. The point is to get the most out of life by approaching it as a gourmand, not as a glutton. The happy medium is taught by Mother Nature in Key 11. Just to remind you, you have to get past balance to get to the yellow behind the throne. So you can't move any further. Live your life according to the will of life. Go about your daily tasks earnestly, no matter how trivial they may seem. No one ever did great things well who had not first done well the small things, the little things. Go about your work in a poised, quiet manner. I'm sure you're all laughing at this point. I do. I have to do 10 things right now. Oh, hurry, hurry. No, wrong. You're not going to get past the Justice card. You won't get past that sword. So you have to change some of your habits. Go about your work in a poised, quiet manner. When you sit down to study, sit still. Teach your body the meaning of balance. Remember, you're in control of the subconscious mind. I've found, personally, taking a calming yoga class is helpful with understanding balance and quieting my mind. At the end of a yoga class, we have what's called shavasana. It's called the dead person's pose. You're lying flat on your back, just arms out to the side, close your eyes, and rest after an hour of doing yoga. And your mind becomes really quiet because you've controlled your body and made it be, and so your mind automatically becomes still. We need to practice this throughout the day. This is not only highly necessary training for an occultist. This is also a most potent suggestion to subconsciousness that you wish it to set to work to equilibrate your whole organism. So this actually has to do with healing your body. Because if your subconscious mind is taking in signals of frantic activity, your body becomes completely disoriented and ill. Therefore, you must fear not, be free of anxiety, and banish the mood of haste. The perfect life force. Whatever you do, remember that every personal activity really is a particular expression of the perfect life force. You are that center of the life force on Earth, and it manifests through you. So your activity is how it manifests on Earth to not only you, but your neighbors, your country, and the planet Earth. So therefore, above all, train yourself to fashion clear, definite forms for your desires. Look upon these mental images as present realities. So that's the Justice card. I know it's a lot of information. And we will now move on to Key 12, the Suspended Man. The Suspended Man in Key 12 is also called the Hanged Man in many tarot decks. So you may have heard of this card under the terminology the Hanged Man. Key 12 demonstrates the law of reversal. So this is very good that it follows the Justice card, because you now realize that you have to get a better grip on your life. How do you do that? How do you reverse your life to function in a state of poise, balance, and calmness? Well, you have to go through the Suspended Man. You have to look at the world in reverse than you have so far. So the application of the law of reversal finds expression in the mental attitude of the truly wise, which is the exact reverse of popular opinion. This is one reason that the first picture in the tarot series is named the Fool. We're not out, we look like the fool to most everybody else. The whole series of tarot keys is intended to effect a reversal of the superficial, deluded interpretation of the universe held by most, and thereby holds the ordinary human being in bondage. So here we have a symbol of absolute freedom as experienced by the wise. By looking at the card, this idea of freedom appears to be a little far-fetched. I mean, really, he's hanging by his foot with his hands tied behind his back, it appears. So that does seem a bit odd that this is the perfect idea of freedom. So let's go over the symbols and colors and discover what is really being said. The number 12. There are many references to the number 12 on this card. The structure from which the Suspended Man is hung is shaped like the Hebrew letter Tav. Each upright line of the letter is a tree trunk with 6 locked-off branches totaling 12. They correspond to the 12 astrological signs of the zodiac, and thus the 12 astrological types of personality. The intimation is plain. In the state of mental reversal symbolized by Key 12, personal peculiarities are reduced to a minimum, i.e. locked branches. The emphasis falls on the inner self, the true spiritual reality. The Hebrew letter Tav. The structure shaped like the Hebrew letter Tav takes us to the last key of the series, Key 21, the world. Key 21 represents the esoteric significance of Tav. In the state of samadhi, or the suspension of personal consciousness, an adept in meditation becomes aware of the real nature of the universe as depicted by Key 21. In key 12, the suspended man reverses his mental attitude and attains a new world view. So now we begin a major change, an internal change. Prior to this, there were a lot of external changes we need to make. Now we have to make internal changes in our attitude, which then will eventually get to key 21. So on key 12, the suspended man, he sees the universe as a dance of life, full of joy and freedom. Furthermore, this suspension intimates that in the state of consciousness represented here, one realizes the other dependence of personality on the universal life. He's suspended from the letter Tav. And finally, universal life is understood to be the perfectly adequate support of personality. You don't need anything else. Changing your thoughts and habits. So here's key 21, if you wanted to get an idea of what it looked like. In turning from the old ways, whether from within or without, there is a complete reversal of thought and habit patterns. They must be set with care and deliberation. And we've talked about this in the past, that the conscious mind, which was the magician, sets the patterns which the subconscious mind picks up and then delivers to you. So the conscious mind is what is setting these patterns with care and deliberation. And you notice that justice with the sword is really helpful. This is where the care comes in. These habits, new habits, may seem unnatural at first, even to the individual. The ways of the wise always look upside down to the flesh-blinded eyes of the material-minded. The Hebrew letter Mem. We see the symbol for water in the lower right-hand corner of the card, plus the Hebrew letter Mem. You see the little waves and then the M at the bottom and the Hebrew letter, which is the letter Mem. This reverse, okay, key 12 is related to water, which reverses the images thrown upon it. I mean, have you ever looked at a pond, and when it's like glass, you can see your reflection upside down in it. Even the number of 12 is a reversal of key 21. This reversal indicates that the state of samadhi is as the reflection of the perfect freedom of the self, depicted as the world dancer in key 21, appears in key 12 to be in a state of restriction or bondage. So it appears that way externally. That is to say, the appearance shown in key 12 is the reverse of the inner reality, the reverse of what's really going on inside the suspended man. We see someone hanging from a limb, but he's in perfect harmony with life. So appearances are not everything. Meditation. When concentration is prolonged, we reach the experience of meditation. The effect produced is what Hindus term samadhi, or the direct experience of superconsciousness. It is the perfect union of personal consciousness with the universal. It is attained by practices that quiet the mind and suspend the formation of chains of associated ideas. You do realize those chains of associated ideas are what get us in trouble, because the subconscious mind will just, you'll have one idea and it just has a great time adding things to it, and then you think they're all yours. Samadhi. In samadhi, the personal vehicle is in a state of motionless trance. The physical body is cold, the heartbeat slow, and the respiration almost imperceptible. All the organic functions are in a state of suspension. But this is only the outward appearance. Interiorly, an adept in this state experiences the bliss of union with the central reality of the universe. That central reality is a focus of intense activity, though itself is at rest. It wouldn't appear that this gentleman suspended by a rope is in a state of intense activity. Others may approach the truth intellectually. Only they who have actually experienced reversal can fully comprehend the water of the wise, as the alchemists call it. You can read 1 billion books, but it won't get you there until you practice reversal. You have to practice this. This is not something you can get in your head. Water. In connection with the symbolism of the high priestess, you learned to identify water with the subconscious mind. Water on the esoteric inner level refers to the stream of consciousness, the ever-flowing mind stuff. Yoga teaches that, quote, when the lake of mind stuff is perfectly clear, it mirrors the light of the spiritual sun. So mem, which means water, and your subconscious mind. You learned also from the high priestess that subconsciousness is actually the substance of every form in the universe. Remember that? That it is the one thing from which all things are made. Consequently, it will be easy to recognize the letter mem as signifying the mother deep or root of nature. Also, mem is one of the 3 mother letters of the Hebrew alphabet. The other 2 are alf, air, and shin, fire. These 3 letters represent the 3 aspects of the absolute. The element earth is derived from a combination of these 3. Therefore, the universal subconsciousness is also your personal subconsciousness. Its creative powers are those which you govern by means of suggestion. And we've covered that idea of suggestion at length in the past cards. Appearances. So what makes all forms of mental and occult practice seem difficult? The supposition that what we have to do demands an exertion of some intangible mental power against the inertia of a very tangible physical reality. That's why it seems difficult. This matter surrounding us seems to be so dense, so resistant, so hard to move, that most people think it preposterous to believe that mere thinking can have any power over it. But a wise man is not taken in by this surface appearance. He sees himself surrounded by things that have neither the solidity nor the inertia his unaided senses report. Remember, we're beginning to develop our spiritual senses. He understands that the densest forms of physical substance, as well as the lightest gases, are really forms of energy, built up from infinitely small, widely separated drops of the fluidic water, quote, of the occultists. Though we appear to be, quote, solid at the atomic level, we are just atoms flying through space, held together by our mind. When a wise man begins to attack the practical problem of changing conditions by changing his thinking, he does not face the difficulty that besets everyone who believes what his senses report concerning the things in his environment. Remember, he's developing and has developed his 5 spiritual senses. He knows that there is no difference between the energy that takes form as thought and that which takes form as a diamond, a piece of metal, or any other physical object. He also knows, in addition, that thought forms are centers of more intense and lasting activity than any physical thing. By means of this reversal in thinking, he is enabled to free his mind from that subjection to appearances that prevents most people from using mental imagery to change conditions for the better. Let's visit the planet Neptune. The planet Neptune is the astrological correspondence to Key 12, the suspended man. Its symbol is on the card in the lower right-hand corner. Neptune was called ruler of the deep, or mystic god of the sea. As a planet, it is related to mysticism as well as to sleep and silence. It is said to rule inspiration. Neptune is also ruler of Pisces, sign of the fishes, 12th sign of the zodiac, wherein all the others have poured their influences. Also remember that Jesus arrived at the beginning of the age of Pisces. Something to ponder. I couldn't go into all the details here, but it's something to think about. The experience of samadhi is Neptunian in nature. Once having direct spiritual experience, you will find it difficult to return to any former pattern of living while knowing that there is more. The suspended man's shape. His shape suggests a 4, his legs, placed above a 3, the triangular position of his arms. 3 times 4 equals 12. The 4 over the 3 also shows the subordination of imagination to reason. Most people permit reason to be dominated by imagination. A few have discovered that reason can determine what mental images shall occupy their field of attention. These few imagine creatively, and their imagery is governed by their mental vision of the place of human personality in the cosmic order. I will also mention that you notice you cannot see his hands. They're behind his back. We as human beings have become prolific at creating with our hands. We think, then we go out and we physically, with our hands, make things. We do drawings, we build buildings, etc. In this state of the suspended man, we do not use our hands. We are now creating directly from our mind and bypassing our hands. So most people merely rationalize their uncontrolled imaginations. I didn't really mean it. I wasn't going to do that. I don't know how it happened. It was someone else's idea. These imaginations are at the mercy of race thought and suggestions created by external appearances. Not so the adept, pictured in Key 12. His subconsciousness is always under the control of reasoning self-consciousness. He is not the slave of moods. He is not swayed by race thought. He remains unmoved when others are tossed about by tempests of passion. Let's look at the colors on the key and what they suggest to support the concepts behind the suspended man. His jacket is blue, the color attributed to the element water. His legs are red, color of fire. These elements are as opposite as light and darkness, as contrary as black and white. Thus, opposition is plainly symbolized by the clothes, as well as the position of the figure. Silent, ostentatious reversal of one's own life, combined with perfect tolerance of the ways of other people, is the method of the practical occultists. We don't stand on the corner and bang drums and say, look at me, look at me. We quietly go about our business and change our lives. The gray background shows a blending of opposites, spirit and matter, wisely. The lunar crescents forming the pockets of the coat represent the forces of subconsciousness. They are shown as pockets to emphasize that subconsciousness is the container of the powers and stored up experience that are the equipment of personality, your personality. The 10 buttons on the jacket represent the 10 aspects of the life power, called sephira, or numerations by Kabbalists. They refer to the tree of life. The white belt and trimming of the jacket suggests the combination of the circle and cross. The cross is uppermost, so that the symbol is that of the planet Mars. Here is a hint that what appears to be absolutely motionless suspension of activity is really a form of intense expression of force. His halo and the twisted rope. The radiant halo surrounding his head suggests that he is an embodiment of the one light. His hair is white, like the hair of the emperor and the hermit, hinting that he is to be identified as the Ancient of Days, even though his face is young. The twisted white rope clearly represents the whirling force that descends from the life power. It comes down the rope, through the body, and out the head. It is said that a yogi in samadhi seems almost dead, except for a hot area on the top of his head. Below the surface. Below the suspended man's head, the ground is hollowed out, as though by a watercourse. This is a further reference to the letter Mem. All that part of his head, from the eyes to the top of the skull, is actually below the surface of the soil, from which the trees spring. Thus we are shown that his vision and his brain functions are active below the surface. This is what differentiates an adept from most people. And of course we want to learn about adepts so that we can become them, become one, each one. He sees through the surface of things and discerns laws hidden below the elusive appearances on which the unenlightened base their judgments and their actions. The green grass reminds us of the nurturing power and presence of the Empress in Key 3. The whole figure represents a pendulum at rest. Thus the tree trunks are like the pillars of Key 2, the High Priestess, and the sphinxes of Key 7, the Chariot. Remember the sphinxes? They're at rest. They're very quiet. They represented I like, I dislike, and they were quiet. The suspended man is unmoved and unmovable. He knows that no one ever thinks anything, or says anything, or does anything. He knows that the one identity is the only thinker, the only speaker, the only actor in the room. He realizes his identity with that one. He sees his personality is perfectly and wholly supported by the central principle of the universe, symbolized by the Tav shape structure. Depending on life itself. This technical achievement does not mean you have withdrawn from life. Remember, we're supposed to be joyful, have a good time. Remember this. Being not concerned means having very deep faith. You can be still because you are depending on life itself. So that's the end of our lecture today. I would just ask that be sure to check out my blog called Gates of Light at WordPress for information about the other cards of the tarot deck. I've also included posts about the symbols and colors. The address is www.gatesoflight.wordpress.com. Thank you for attending this webinar on Justice and the Suspended Man. Does anyone have questions?